Raising the corporate tax rate to pay for the one big beautiful bill would blank.
Ooh, this is fun.
It's a big blank, and it's one that, for all of our Washington Examiner viewers at home, if you didn't see last week, our own Christian Day Talk made sure to press the White House on whether or not this was actually a possibility.
Can you explain why the president opted to send Secretary Hegseth to the dignified transfer last week instead of attending himself?
Sure. The Secretary Hegseth was there to represent the administration. The president has expressed his condolences to these families, as have I from this podium.
That definitely doesn't sound like a no from the White House, right?
No, it does not.
Yeah.
And that's the big headline here. And I would like to warn the White House that raising the corporate tax rate to pay for the one big beautiful bill would make it dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's DOA politically, economically, in all senses.
Mm-hmm.
Broadly speaking, what is Trump trying to do here with these tariffs? If he is saying the tariffs are supposed to both be a revenue raiser and we want to bring back more domestic manufacturing and more businesses that have, onshore more business, then the number one thing you would want to do is reduce the corporate tax rate and also include in, expensing, which has been a big conversation. The last thing you would do is touch the corporate tax rate, which Trump term one under the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was made permanent. That cut from the 35% top rate to the 21% flat corporate tax rate, that was made permanent. The fact that they're even bringing that into this bill, opening up Pandora's box, we won't find hope in the bottom of that box. We will find an election slaughter in the midterms.
I'm glad you brought up TCJA because you are right. This is not only a rescission of Trump's campaign promise from last year to lower the corporate tax rate again from 21% to 15%.
Yeah.
He's doing the opposite. He's saying, I'm undoing my old policies, which folks on both sides of the aisle liked because they were pro-growth. What this shows is that Trump has literally zero ideological convictions this time around. He is wholly consumed with being president, but he does not want to actually do president and implement a cohesive, consistent agenda, right? It's not just in economic policy. Look at what he's doing with Iran, which we've already talked about earlier today. During his first term, he withdrew from JCPOA. He launched a maximum pressure campaign on Iran, which included, really crippling economic sanctions on top of heavy military attacks on these proxy groups throughout the Middle East. And now he's just saying, we're going to, I'm going to be a pen pal with the Ayatollah, and we're going to solve.
They're literally trying to assassinate you, right now. They have a fatwa out for you, President Trump. Please don't empower people that want to kill you.
What this development shows is that everyone who voted for Donald Trump should be concerned that he not only is not going to do what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail, he's just kind of making it up as he goes. And I know they're doing this as a means of trying to win those budget hawks in the House to get on board with the tax plan. But at what cost? Are you sacrificing your own policies and ideals to get a deal done? Is that what being the best deal maker in the country or in the world means these days? I don't know.
And we've mapped out why the TCJA extension is so important. So TCJA, at the end of this year, you have a number of individual and estate tax provisions that are expiring. But most significant is the fact that it winds up being that 62% of Americans wind up with a tax hike if the TCJA individual provisions expire.
Yeah.
Practically speaking, a huge part of that is just because that standard deduction was doubled, which also simplified taxes for a lot of Americans. Whereas instead of having to go and TurboTax and itemize every iota of whatever deduction you can find, you just take that standard deduction, making it really easy to file. Mm-hmm. Now, what would be worse than letting those 62% of Americans get somewhat of an individual tax hike would be reversing that corporate tax cut. Yeah. Because consider this. So since 2017, the corporate tax revenue as a share of GDP has increased by more than 40%. The total corporate tax revenue collected by the federal government has more than doubled. Why? Because taxes, it's not the higher the rate, the more money you get. Like the Laffer curve does exist.
You have to incentivize investments and new opportunities and capital flowing into areas.
And like the whole point was to make us more competitive with the rest of the developed world. So when you combine national and subnational corporate taxes, so that would be the federal corporate tax rate on top of the average state tax rates. Ours averages at almost 26%, but the OECD average is only 24%. So yes, the answer you would think is, let's cut that corporate tax rate if we're going to do the whole tariff thing to bring back more businesses. And like, frankly, maybe, I'm totally fine being Scrooge McDuck, but like, it's because I'm a long-term thinker. Long-term Americans, if the only two options were individual tax hike in the midterm election year of 2026 or permanently hampering American investment and how competitive we are for long-term economic growth in exchange for what? No tax on Social Security for boomers that we've already handed everything to anyway? I'm sorry. I'm going to have to take the personal tax hike. And the farce of it all is that those are not the only two options. We have a billion other ways to raise money to do this. And yet,
this is what we're working with.